Yeah, welcome, listener. Here we are, back for another episode of Coco Indulge. We're real people, and we offer real reviews. So we're not in the pockets of the big corporations.
Although we'd like to be.
Well, yes, true. We have no vested interest other than for you, listener. I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Dots.
And tell me, Coco, what are we watching? Now, see, you're looking at my hair again. What's...
Well, when you said that, now I'm going to look at your hair, but it looks fine.
So what are we talking about in this episode of the podcast, Coco?
Today, we are reviewing The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 11, The Heiress.
The hairiest.
I think you've already made that joke.
Yeah, I did. But that was just to you.
Not on the air.
Not on the air.
So, in this episode, the Mandalorian is still looking for the Jedi to reunite Baby Yoda with, but he and the Frog Lady finally get to where she needs to go to meet up with her husband to get her legs fertilized. If you didn't listen to our review of Season 2, Episode 2 of The Mandalorian, do that, because now that what I just said will make more sense.
Right.
So Mando is able to reunite Frog Lady and her husband, but of course, trouble finds Mando. He actually ends up meeting up with 3 other Mandalorians who say, "We will help you find the Jedi if you help us with this thing that we want to do."
They were the pastel Mandalorians, though. Because they had like pastel colors on their armor.
Oh, okay.
The pastel faction.
So they want to take over control of their home planet. So what he has to help them with involves that. And at the end, everybody succeeds. He is told by the main Mandalorian, whose name is Bo-Katan, to go to some other planet whose name escapes me right now, and to meet up with Ahsoka Tano. Tell Ahsoka Tano that Bo-Katan sent him, and she can help him. And so that's where we leave off. Mando's ship has been sort of fixed from the hijinks of last week, but he's still kind of in a space hoopty, and he and Baby Yoda...
What's a hoopty?
It's like a jalopy.
Oh, okay.
And he and Baby...
That's a great word. Hoopty.
Actually, space hoopty is a term from Homeboys in Outer Space, which was a short-lived sitcom on like...
What?
Yeah, from like the early 2000s or late 90s.
Okay, listener, this is a lot of depth here. That you had no idea you were getting into space hoopty when you clicked on this podcast.
I'm reviving space hoopty 20 years after.
I might get that as a tattoo.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Can I get that for you for Christmas?
Yeah. Hoopty.
So
Canadian hoopty.
Mando and Baby Yoda drive off in the space hoopty in search of Ahsoka Tano.
And so that was a great job, Coco. Thank you. I can summarize the first 3 episodes. Are you ready? Including this one.
Yeah, I know.
Mando needs to get Baby Yoda somewhere. He can't do it unless he strikes a bargain with third party. Third party lives up to the bargain, and then they move on to the next episode. Because that's essentially these are like cookie cutters. These episodes are the exact same, only different situations. So the first one was we need to
kill the crate dragon
with the huge worm guy from the underneath the ground eating everybody. Can you just help us there, Mando, and then we'll get you to the next step. Oh, okay. And then good. And then the next one is, okay, can you deliver the Frog Lady to Frog Planet so she can be with Frog Daddy? And then did it. And then now it's like pastel Mandalorians are like, if you only help us do this one thing, then we'll tell you what we need to tell you. And then they did it. So now like we're in 3 consecutive episodes. The exact same thing has happened. Just all the situations have changed.
So
I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I was going to say, so this is leading into your review of this episode.
They got to mix it up, don't you? I know you're a huge fan here, but is it not just like a cookie cutter to you here? Or
it is. I think this season would be a lot better if they would have cut the first episode off it, and then the second episode would have been the season premiere, and this episode would have been the second episode. It feels like they are actually getting closer to when they are going to meet the Jedi.
Does it though?
It does. Especially because now, listener, I have not watched the Clone Wars, but Ahsoka Tano is Anakin Skywalker's Padawan. So,
of course.
Yeah. So, so he's basically meeting a Jedi. if he's able to find Ahsoka Tano, which allegedly is going to be in the next episode. Halfway through the season, he might finally have completed his quest to reunite Baby Yoda with the Jedi.
I don't know how to make this more clear, Jon Favreau, but more Gina Carano, more Carl Weathers. We haven't seen them yet in the first 3 episodes, and I'm missing them large time. Like they were essential to me enjoying the first run in that first season because I liked the chemistry, and it all felt like kind of like in the ways that the original Star Wars was appealing, and you had all these groups of people and they were all bickering, but they loved each other, and they had their various different backgrounds and differences and everything like that, but they still banded together in the end and defeated that was the essential thing to me in the first Star Wars and the Empire Strikes Back as well. And we're not getting this at all. It's just like a one-man journey. Now, I understand that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a lone gunman on a mission, and that's why the music is always like boom, boom, like like you expect that kind of vibe to it. I get it. But the appealing part of the first season to me, was this family getting together, a quote-unquote family of misfits banding together to get the mission solved. And I'm not vibing that right now.
Wow.
Well, what do you think, though?
So this is probably my favorite episode so far of the season, which isn't saying a lot, obviously, because we're only 3 in, and the first one just started off with such a dud.
Right.
But the quality, I think, has gone up in each of the 3 episodes, and it does feel like we are actually getting closer to what he's trying to do. It feels like this episode was the most in service of the overall storyline of the season.
I can see that.
Than the other 2 were. So, yeah, I think I enjoyed it. I'm really happy that we might finally actually have a payoff next episode because I don't know how much longer I can keep being cock-blocked on the finding the Jedi storyline. But
we just keep getting teased that there's more coming, and then when we get through that episode, it's like, I'm not having any clearer image here of where he's going.
Yeah, totally.
I understand, Baby Yoda's hungry. I get it. You got to nail everything down, or he's going to eat it, and or creatures that are foes or friends are all fair game from the scarf monster that is Baby Yoda. And I get it that Mandalorian guy is reluctant to go on in these bargains, but he always goes in on them anyway. They're just, I'm getting a little frustrated. Like I said, Gina Carano and Carl Weathers, episode 4, they got to show up soon because I'm missing them.
Well, there's also promise for more excitement in the future because Moff Gideon, Giancarlo Esposito, did show up for a brief shining moment. And apparently the Katie Sackhoff character, Bo-Katan, she somehow, in order to take back over the planet of Mandalore, she needs his dark saber. And so Giancarlo Esposito looks as though he might play a larger role maybe at the end of this season with the whole darksaber thing coming in. So it feels like the first 3 episodes of this season have set up the end of this season. So hopefully the last 4 or 5 episodes, there is a really big payoff. Okay, you put in your time for these first 3 episodes, so now we're really going to blow it out. And the good news about this episode also is that it was only 36 minutes long.
Yeah.
It flew by.
Yeah.
It wasn't draggy at all. It really held my interest. Even the storylines so Mando ends up meeting the 3 other Mandalorians when
the pastel Mandalorians.
I'm not going to call them that. He trusts somebody to take him to another Mandalorian, but it turns out he shouldn't have trusted that person, and he gets trapped in a cage with a man-eating sea creature, and the other Mandalorians come to save him, and that's how he meets up with them. And that could have been, that's another storyline that's not going anywhere, but it was very brief. We didn't spend 20 minutes on the ship before he got thrown in the cage with the man-eating creature, so it could have gone off into somewhere, but they cut it off very quickly. So
there's also a common theme here in these, at least the last 2 episodes that I can see, is that we just it's hard to believe, but every time Mandalorian and the Baby Yoda are in a tight grind, at the last second, somebody comes along and saves them. So the pastel Mandalorians and then the
X-Wing guys.
In the cave when the spiders looked like they were closing in. And I'm sure there was one in the first episode that I can't remember. But like it's to me, it's really frustrating because I'm seeing the same high watermarks in each episode, they're just changing the scenery and changing the characters, but the storyline is essentially the same. Like, we still don't know anything about the Mandalorian from the beginning of the season. Like, we don't know anything more about him. We don't know it. We haven't really seen anything in terms of Baby Yoda's powers or how he's developing. Like, maybe they're saving that for when he encounters the Jedi, when he finally gets there and they take him under his wing or whatever. But we're not seeing any character development whatsoever in these 3 episodes. At least I'm not, and I'm not into the canon like you are, but I'm not seeing anything that's differentiating one episode from the other. I'm not seeing anything that's compelling, that's leading me to be more sympathetic about the characters, other than Baby Yoda, looking up at Daddy Mandalorian and sort of like his ears go down and he goes meh, and like he makes these cute noises and like that gets a little shallow after a while.
I did wonder, now that you mentioned that, it reminds me. This is the second episode where somebody had to save Mando's butt. Mm-hmm. Maybe the third. We can't remember the first episode that clearly. But in the first season, he was doing everything himself.
Right.
So I wonder if this is like a counterbalance to the first season where it's like, sometimes it's not good to be a lone wolf. Sometimes, you need
You're vulnerable.
Yeah, you're vulnerable. Like, maybe this is sort of like you need to find your family, especially because they are kind of playing up like Mando's having to teach Baby Yoda like right from wrong. It's like having a child. Like you have to like raise that child to be a good human being.
Right.
Or whatever Yoda is.
Or Yoda
guy, yeah. So maybe it's kind of like a family theme this season where, and then the frog lady needs to get her eggs fertilized. So there's like a lot of kind of family themes going on this season. So maybe this is like a reaction to season 1 where it was just Mando and the kid.
Well, as a parent, I'm looking at this from a parent's perspective, obviously, and I'm seeing that. So Baby Yoda is essentially looking at Mandalorian as a father figure in some ways, and Mandalorian guy in the last 2 is just getting his butt kicked. So that's got to be traumatic for Baby Yoda. Like maybe that affects Baby Yoda down the road somehow, and he's got to go to therapy. Or... Maybe
that's why Baby Yoda is stress eating all the frog eggs. Right. Maybe that's Baby Yoda's stress response. Because I know that's my stress response.
Exactly. That's why the cookies disappear when I'm stressed out. It's like, oh, the girl's got 19 hours of homework. What am I going to do? And I'm like, I better have 4 Fudgios.
You do that anyways.
Well, that's true.
When you're stressed out, you have 8 Fudgios as opposed to 4.
Send your Fudgios to P.O. Box 479, Northeast, United States. And the other thing about that, too, is following up on your point, is that in the first episode, it started promisingly in that we saw the scene in the one of the various scenes where he seems like he meets people in cantinas across the universe.
I want that job. I'm just meeting people in bars.
He just cozies up and sits down, and all these guys are surrounding him like, you're in trouble now. And then he kills them all with like the special shooter gun thing that goes around and it targets everybody. And so I thought that was the way it should have been, instead of the Mandalorian waiting for the pastel Mandalorians to save him from the cage of water. Like he's got some sort of cutter thing that could have cut out the cage that he was in. So the inconsistency is a little bit weird for me too. So I'm waiting to see what episode 4 brings. How many episodes we got? 8?
I think there's 8.
Yeah.
So we're almost halfway through the season.
Yeah.
So what would you give this episode if you have nothing else to say about it?
I would give this one, well, I think the last one I gave half, right?
No, last one you gave, I think, 1 frog egg up.
1 frog egg. So I would give this one probably 1 1/4 frog eggs up, because I think it was better than the last episode. And yet we have, again, more recycled. I keep thinking of the more recycled storylines, like the spaceship that he's flying, which is the Hoopty. He
Homeboys in outer space.
It's like it's just like the Millennium Falcon all over again, right? Like the Millennium Falcon, when we first were introduced to it, was a pile of junk, right? Like you were somebody when Princess Leia's getting, it's like, you taking me in this pile of junk or something like that. So the running joke was the Millennium Falcon throughout that, and so it's just the recycled thing. So we need something different. If we have different, then I'm gonna give it more than 1 1/4 eggs up.
Wow.
How about you, Coco? What's your rating?
So episode 1, I gave a C. Episode 2, I gave like a B-. This one I'd give like a solid B.
Yeah.
It was it had a good pace. It had it like I said, it felt like it was more in service of the overall storyline of the season than the other 2 episodes have been so far. So, and I like the introduction of Moff Gideon, setting up more storylines later in the season.
Is that a porn name, by the way?
It should be. And I also I did not include this in my synopsis, but the 3 Mandalorians who Mando met, they took their helmets off, and he was just like, WTF. And they said that I guess for lack of a better word, sect of Mandalorians that do not take their helmets out, they broke away from like the mainstream Mandalorians. And so I guess there's different competing Mandalorian creeds out there about taking the helmet off or not. So that's also a good thing to explore is, this belief system that Mando grew up with, maybe it's not really a thing. And so that's going to set up maybe a lot of like internal analysis for him, which is exactly what I know you're looking forward to is Mandalorian psychotherapy.
I can't get enough of the Mandalorian psychotherapy. I am glad you raised that because that was one of the few things that I thought was interesting and moved the needle a little bit was that the fact that we're going to have different philosophies among the same, like you look at the human race, how many different creeds and cultures and religions, and even though we all sort of look the same in a general universe kind of way, we're all the kind of the same species. Within our species, there are all these divisions, and you don't see that a lot in a show like this. You don't like you. I always think it's funny when you have the villains, like we did the guys from the Empire driving the ship, and one guy had an English accent, one guy was American. It's like, how do they have accents in space? Like, where does this come from? Like, how is a guy getting a British accent in the Empire? Like, I don't understand. So I'm glad you raised that because that was one thing to look out for was that maybe there's the pastel Mandalorians and maybe there's the atheist Mandalorians and then all sorts of different aspects. Like that to me is a little bit more fascinating. If we're going to talk about the Mandalorian, there's got to be more than just the guy that we're looking at. So that was an interesting point to me.
All right.
I hope they explore that.
So listener, tepid approval from Daltz, solid-ish approval from Coco.
All right. So we're going in the right direction, though, I think.
Yeah. I think so far, if you start this season, if you haven't started it yet, based on what we've seen so far, you could probably just start it right here and watch the rest of the season. Because the first 2 episodes, stuff will probably come back from them, but I don't think you necessarily have to watch them.
And you'll be able to follow it, I'm sure, because it's designed. I think a series like this, I always think of it, maybe this is overthinking it, but I like to see this as one big long production. So if there were 3 of these put together into one movie, would this be a compelling production, right? And I'm looking at it and it's like, no, they don't need to be 3. Like the first season to me, it could have been one long production because it was that good and the storylines interwoven and everything like that. It seemed like it was a lot more connected and things were more reliant, whereas these are all separate. Yeah. So to me, you couldn't make one movie out of these 3 episodes. It just wouldn't make any sense. Whereas I think some of the other things that we watched, the first 3 episodes felt like they could have been one piece, sit down and watch them all in one. So not really feeling it right now, listener, but I think if episode 4 has Gina and Carl, then saving the day. Can't say it enough. So anyway, for another episode of the podcast, listener, thanks for joining us. I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Daltz.